Yo, 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 what up, what up, what up? It is I, Cramp Lord. We're back with another video. This time it is the CreamBetweens, all the films that didn't make the top and bottom list for my favorite and least favorite films of the year. We have a lot to talk about. We got 80 films to cover, I know. I'm breaking the video into two parts, so this is part 1. Coming up soon is part 2. And yeah, I'm just going to get the ball rolling. I'm not going to talk about these films for very long because we have a lot to get to. Let's do it. At the first kind of dishonorable mention spot, we have Priscilla. This is directed by Sofia Coppola, who makes a lot of movies about bored women. I found this to be very, very boring. So she nailed that. But I don't know. I've just seen a lot of films as of recently about young women going into royalty. In this instance, it was Elvis grooming a 15-year-old child. Let's not sugarcoat it here. And they get into it, and the husband can either be abusive or they're just bored or whatever. I don't know. And it's just, there's so many of these movies, and I don't really see how this film is doing anything different. It kind of nails the whole Graceland thing pretty well, but other than that, I just didn't really see the point of this. Next is Consecration. This is a kind of a Catholic guilt shitpost of a movie. It is all over the place. I don't remember really anything about the plot because it was so convoluted and didn't make any sense. So yeah, we're gonna move on from that. Next is Devil Conspiracy. This is I think it's a Christian film, but it's also like very violent and like they curse. I think they fucking dropped the F-bomb. So that's interesting, right? I went to see this because I got a AMC Stubs A-list subscription gifted to me. So I wanted to go see movies, man. I had seen all the movies that I wanted to see, so I just decided, hey, fuck it, I'll go see this wild-looking movie. And it was wild. It was indeed wild. I'll give it that. It wasn't good, but it was wild. Next is Bottoms. Wasn't huge on this one. Obviously, it's towards the bottom of the CreamBetweens list. It's a sex comedy like we saw in the early 2000s, things like American Pie. It's kind of a parody of those at the same time, as well as being one. It's very mean-spirited, like those movies are. But it's just so goofy and off the wall. But at the same time, it has tender moments, which I don't necessarily think work that well with the tone of the rest of the movie. So it's just a little way too all over the place. And at the same time, the jokes are like a mile a minute, more than that. Like, they're coming fast. And the joke to laugh ratio for me was alarmingly low, so I just really didn't get much out of this one. Next is Quiz Lady. This was a, no frills, kind of just silly buddy comedy movie about two sisters. One is like in gambling debt with like the Yakuza or something, and then the other one is a game show host obsessive, like Jeopardy. She's obsessed with Jeopardy. And this one has a surprise performance from Will Ferrell as a very gentle and heartwarming game show host, which was definitely a homage and a little tribute to the late Jeopardy game show host. I can't recall his name, but for that it was worth seeing. Otherwise it's just kind of a dumb little buddy movie, but no harm, no foul. Next is Hunt Her, Kill Her. the title's pretty self-explanatory. That's all this movie is. I like it when a film can commit to a certain concept and hone in on it and do it really well. This film does that, but at the same time, it doesn't build upon what it's doing very, very much at all. It just feels very like I've seen this before. I saw it in the theater. It was fine, and not really worth a lot of people's time, though, unfortunately. Next is Black Friday, which is not the title of the film. It's actually Thanksgiving. This is an alternate title for, I have no idea what language that is. But yeah, it's called Thanksgiving. It's an Eli Roth movie based on a trailer that came out, I think, over 10 years ago. It was a fake trailer for the Quentin Tarantino and the guy who did the Sin City movies, Project Grindhouse. It was a fake trailer, and he turned it into a movie over 10 years later, and it was pretty mid, to be honest. There were some parts that were memorable, but it's not that good. Next is Take Care of Maya. This is a Netflix documentary about a young girl who has a horrible experience with, like, Child Protective Services, or it was some other child welfare agency in a hospital setting that starts a series of events that are just completely ridiculous. Like, it's so stupid. I'm not saying the movie is stupid. I'm just saying, like, these series of events that happen are just so unnecessary. And it's stuff that's happening right now. It's interesting watch because of, the subject matter. The film itself is not that special. In fact, I actually thought the end of it was, like, really weirdly intrusive documentary filmmaking and really manipulative with the way it frames certain people and asks certain questions. I didn't like the ending at all, but the rest of the film was very informative and interesting, to say the least. Yeah. Okay, next we have Corsage, another film in the women in royalty canon being bored or unhappy in their situation. And look, like, I'd be unhappy too. But it's like, when are we gonna do something interesting here, man? Like, there can only be so many films about the same thing. This one takes the Marie Antoinette route of being kind of punky and historically inaccurate on purpose. And it's just like, whatever. Well made, don't get me wrong. Right now, like, I'm in the area of films that are super well made. I just didn't necessarily care for them that much, or I just thought they were fine. But you can tell they were very well made. Such as this film, Earth Mama. I mean, one of the most kind of dreamy, but also very much a film set in realism. But again, it's about a story that I've seen told 1,000 times. Of course, this is representation that is obviously more recent, but it doesn't change the fact that I feel like we're kind of getting exploitive here with this. But what do I know? Next is Asteroid City. I'll admit I'm getting the Wes Anderson fatigue. I try not to be contrarian, man. I really do, but I just couldn't stand this when I saw it. I'm just really fatigued with the style. I've heard people talk about this movie, the people that really love it, and what they get out of it sounds fascinating. It's like, I want to get that out of it, but the style is just so distractingly grating to me that I can't focus on what the film is actually saying or doing, because I just wish I wasn't watching it in this style. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, unfortunately, that's how I feel about Wes Anderson these days. Maybe one day I'll come around. Next is The Royal Hotel. This is from Kitty Green and Julia Garner, which, the last film they did together, The Assistant, I absolutely loved. It was one of my favorite films, I think, of 2020. Is that when it came out? Something like that. Absolutely loved it. This one was a huge disappointment for me. It's like a bit of a very much a tight grip thriller. It's lots of tension about these two girls that are working in this really remote Australian bar where it's a bunch of, I think, miners who come in and are very rural. They're very, very rural. And the problem that I have with this movie is that it just doesn't make any fucking sense. The character motivations, the decisions that they make, they don't make any sense. And it's not like oh, don't go in there, they'll get you. It's just like, you're fucking stupid. Why would you do that? Kind of situation. Anyway, let's move on. Next is Marlowe. This is a film that I saw in the theater, and I was just really, really bored by. At moments, it caught my attention because there's these really shockingly violent moments, and then some really visually striking moments as well. But then the movie continues, and it's just, I start to zone out again. But this is a film that I actually have thought about quite a bit since I saw it, and I feel like I'm totally missing something. It seems very surface level, and it very well just could be very surface level, but I think there's something hiding under the surface here. I think there's something more going on. I would like to revisit this one day. Next is Past Lives. I know a lot of people love this movie, but from the very beginning of the movie, one thing that I recognized within the first 20 minutes of the film was that everybody was acting perfect. I mean, everybody looked perfect. Everybody had a perfect life. Their life trajectory was perfect. Everything they said was perfect. Nobody was ever super irrational. If they were, they would fix themselves right away. They said the right thing. They reacted the right way. It was just, everybody was perfect. And look, I understand maybe having an experience and having all of these tumultuous emotions and feelings and not saying the right things or not thinking the right things many, many times. And so you think back about how you would have handled the situation, or how was the right way to handle the situation. Maybe you did eventually, but it took you a long time to get there. But I don't see the point of telling a story where you only say the right thing. It's clear that this didn't happen, and if it did happen, it didn't happen this way. And from the very beginning, that's the way that I saw it. And I don't know if it was weak writing or what. I just didn't get it. I thought it was very lovely. It's lovely to look at too. I just wasn't really impressed by this all that much. Next is Blondie. This is an Argentinian film. Really interesting premise. I think it was about this woman who she's living a very counterculture-esque life. You know, she goes to punk shows or indie shows or whatever. She smokes a lot of weed. She's like, I mean, you can kind of see her on the cover there. She's cool, bro. And she's kind of ambiguous in age. Like, she could be like 20 something, maybe he's done a little bit too many drugs, or is approaching 40. It's really ambiguous. And she has this dude that's just kind of hanging around quite a bit. It seems like they room together, live together, or whatnot. You don't know if it's a boyfriend or just like a friend. They seem like they're best friends. They seem like they're buds. And then you come to realize that's her son. And you come to realize that she had him when she was like really, really young, like 15. And so now she's like 35, right? And he's like a full-grown adult. And it's just this really interesting premise. But then the film just kind of devolves into these plot lines that I didn't really care all that much about. Yeah, I wish the whole film was better, but just that early premise is really interesting. It's really, really interesting. Anyway, next up we have Scarlet. This is a French film that I saw. It was actually one of the last movies that I watched from this year. It comes from a large chunk of films that I found on Canopy that were released in 2023 for me, that I never got around to, or I never even knew came on Canopy. I hadn't been on there in a long time. And so yeah, this is the first of the bunch, and this was alright. It was shot incredibly. This is one of the most beautiful films of the year, without a doubt. I was just completely zoned out when it came to the plot or what was happening with these characters. I just had no clue. And the movie didn't really do a great job at keeping you engaged. It was also at my fault as well. I wasn't really trying my hardest. But I will say the images were gorgeous. A lot of them looked like they were kind of imitating what a film shot in, I think, like the 30s. I think this is when this takes place. Like, would look like it was wild how it looked, like it came straight out of the 30s or something. Next is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, Mutant Mayhem. A lot of people love this. A lot of people have this in their top 10s, which is crazy to me. I thought it was fine. Obviously, the animation style is reminiscent of the Spider-Verse films. I thought it was cute, you know. But I didn't really see anything all that special about it. It was like kind of just checking all the boxes, you know. Not really in a good way, but in a competent sort of way. I don't know. It was fine. It was fun. No harm, no foul again. But no. Next is Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. This one I feel a bit more positively about. I think it's on the same level as Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The reason why I was a bit more negative about that is because people were really talking it up. People have been talking this film up as well. But I still feel like this doesn't necessarily get the credit it deserves. It's just a really fun movie. It's not trying to be anything that it's not. Absolutely. It's just a good time. Like, you feel like you're at a theme park when you're watching this movie. It's fun. It's fun. I had a good time with it. Okay, next up we have Nimona. So this is what all of those animation students, game design students, and all of the above have been working on. You know the ones I'm talking about. The ones that are on DeviantArt and Tumblr and have like a homogenized sense of humor, style, things that they identify with. This is what they've all been working on. It's been culminating up to this point. But to be honest, at moments, I was charmed by this. I really was. Even though it's very cringy, it's still kind of charming because it's innocent, you know? When it comes to the world, I think there are problems with having a reflection of, you know, reality around you that only really serves your goals. You know what I'm saying? Like, the resentments are set up perfectly because that's the way that you see the world, you know? But you know, it's fine. I don't think it's hurting anything. Yeah, Nimona, man. All right. Next, we're getting into the 6 out of 10s, the 3 stars, man. We're past the threshold of what's that? Under 500. Is that the term? That's that the football term? Yeah, this is a documentary about Sylvester Stallone. I actually didn't really plan on watching this, but my mom really wanted me to watch it around Christmas time, and so she put it on. I wasn't really expecting much because I'm not the biggest Rocky fan, to be honest with you. It is something that I did want to revisit because I watched it a long time ago. I watched a few of the movies, or a couple of them, and it's something that I wanted to revisit, but I never did. And now I kind of wish I did, because I watched this and it really puts into context how good those movies are, because they're a true and really kind of beautiful reflection of Sylvester himself, which artists do all the time. But Sylvester Stallone is like this kind of guy who, it seems, he doesn't come across as an artist, you know, at all. He's not that type. But I just found his drive and his naive honesty that he put into those Rocky films to be so charming and really quite endearing. When it went past Rocky, I didn't really care. I didn't really care all that much about his other projects and action films and stuff like that. This movie didn't really do a good job at making those any more interesting than they are. But the first 30 minutes of this, the first 30 to 45 minutes of this are great, and really put a new perspective on Sly and the Rocky films. Next is another movie, documentary about movies, is Desperate Souls, Dark City, and the Legend of Midnight Cowboy. Ridiculously long title, but I love Midnight Cowboy. It's one of my favorite movies ever. It's one of those threshold movies for me. When I saw it, I hadn't seen a lot of great movies, but I was exploring, and this was one of them that I came across, and it just completely like transcended me past that threshold, you know. And it's just one of those movies that I feel like is on my save wave. It's on my save wavelength. Excuse me. And yeah, this film had a lot of really interesting things to say about it, about its history, about the director and all that. But at the same time, it felt like it was reaching at points and just kind of talking in circles. I will say, I think it's funny how everybody sees Jon Voight as this like villain now. I know he's a piece of shit with his political views and that kind of thing, but like, I don't know, he just seems, he seems to emulate this character in Midnight Cowboy really well. He's like this kind of machismo type guy who also has a good heart. So he's really easily influenced, but he's also not afraid of saying what's on his mind. So what I will say is that Midnight Cowboy is not Midnight Cowboy without Jon Voight. There's a lot of other things that made that movie, but Jon Voight, because of his flaws, is what makes his character in this movie so vital to it. Yeah, moving on. All right, next up we have Napoleon from good old Ridley Scott. There was some real stinkers back in 2021. Ridley Scott releasing 2 films, House of Gucci and The Last Duel, both of which I did not like. One of which I hated, The Last Duel. And now he's back. He's back on his bullshit. Now, I enjoyed this, and the only reason why I did is because of the large focus on the Josephine and Napoleon relationship. Without that, this movie would be so ungodly boring and uninteresting. That is what makes this movie, because it's that relationship that reflects on everything else in Napoleon's life. So, yeah, good on you, Ridley Scott, for doing something right. Again, this isn't great, but it gets the job done. Next is Ferrari from Michael Mann. I'm not like a Michael Mann dude. There's people out there who are obsessives. I've only seen 2 of his films, both of which I love. I've seen Heat. Everybody loves Heat. How can you hate Heat? But I've also seen Manhunter, which is excellent. And so I kind of understand Michael Mann's whole shtick about obsessive men. And I went into this, kind of excited. It's been a long time since Michael Mann's released anything. Apparently he's been trying to get this made for a very long time. And I don't know, it just felt like I was watching Napoleon again. I don't really get what folks who absolutely adore this film are getting out of it. It just seems really just on the surface level. I don't know. Maybe I'll grow to like it as I explore more of Mann's filmography. This is a crazy poster. The Whale from Darren Aronofsky. Yeah, I don't think this is horrible. Like, people just write it off because of the whole fat suit thing. Also, a lot of people consider this a movie from last year, but it didn't come out for me until the beginning of this year. This is probably one of the first films I saw from this year. But yeah, I thought it was fine. I liked a lot of the, kind of moral messages it was trying to get across. I thought it was nice, but otherwise I thought it was just fine. I thought it was a little much at moments. Next is Holy Spider. Nobody saw this when it came out. I saw this in a completely empty theater. And it didn't really gain traction until it went on streaming. I heard people start talking about it. It's like, oh, there's this really great movie from Iran. And I don't even think it's from Iran. It's an Iranian director, but I think this is like a completely Danish produced project, because I don't think Iran would allow a project like this to be created because of its subject matter. It's about a serial rapist and killer of women, obviously. And I don't know, I thought it was fine. Of course, like, it's really interesting to see a kind of grimy look at a place like Iran, because when we do get cinema from a place like that, it's from Kiarostami, who kind of, you know, points out the beauties and subtleties of the area, which is also great. But everywhere has grimy, gross, whatever. So yeah, I mean, it was kind of interesting to see that, but I found this really exploitative, because it shows every single kill in detail. And I just didn't think it was necessary. It was like, really, we're doing this again. I have to watch one of these again. And I really didn't appreciate that. But it's fine. Check it out if that sounds interesting to you in any way. Next is Dos Estaciones. This is a Mexican film. It's about a woman who's like, she's very much like a butch lesbian type, but I think she might be like trans, but like repressed trans. I don't know. I'm gonna be honest, I was a little zoned out when I watched this. I watched it early in the morning and I was like still sleepy, but I remember enjoying it from what I did comprehend. I actually remember enjoying it quite a bit. This is a really unique atmosphere this film has. It takes place in a like a tequila farm and distillery. I think that's what you call it, a distillery for tequila, making tequila. So it's like agave everywhere, and it's like they're like struggling to hold on. And I don't know, I thought it was an interesting story, really well made. Yeah. Next is The Starling Girl, about a very conservative Christian community, and a young girl in that community falls in love with her youth pastor, who just came back from Puerto Rico. And the youth pastor's feeling a little bit frisky. He's feeling a little bit, uninspired by his own community after leaving it for a little bit. He's like, oh, wow, the world is actually kind of cool outside of here. And then this young girl's just horny. So, shit hits the fan, as always. And it was fine. I didn't love it, but I thought it was good. I thought it was well made. Again, we're kind of in the area of, the sixes, where it's movies that I liked and I thought were well made. I just didn't get that much out of them. Yeah. Next is Hurricane Season. This is another film from Mexico. This is the biggest downer, like the most miserable film of the year, without a doubt. This is so dark, and it just feels like oh my God, I didn't even think about the title. Hurricanes. This is what hurricanes make me feel like. I live in Florida. Hurricanes, they bring this wave of depression and just feeling of grossness, and everybody seems to be just like horrible people at this moment in time during hurricanes. Like, I hate hurricanes. They bring this metaphysical misery with them. And that's what this movie does very well. I didn't enjoy being in that. But this takes place in, I think, like southern Mexico, so it's pretty tropical and just sweaty, and yeah, not a place I would want to live. And shit goes down. I mean, I encourage people to see this. Barely anybody's seen this. It's very well made. Like I said, these are well made films. It's just miserable, you know. Next is Ennismen. This is another film like kind of like Dos Estaciones, where I was a little zoned out. I got back from a pretty long day at work, and I just threw this on just to throw it on, and I was like kind of zoning out, kind of maybe falling asleep a little bit. It is definitely a movie to fall asleep to. There's barely any dialogue, and it's incoherent on purpose. It's very experimental storytelling. It's horror, but like kind of folky horror. It was cool though. I will admit, even this is the thing with me. It's like if you're falling asleep to a movie, or a movie is even making you fall asleep, that is not a detriment to the movie. Like, I think I've talked about this in the past, but I don't see that as a bad thing at all. And so because I was half asleep during this movie, this film had a different effect on me than most films do. So again, I enjoyed it for that, but in terms of getting a lasting impact, not much. Maybe I'll rewatch it, and I will, but yeah, it's weird. It's on Hulu, I think, so check it out. Okay, now we're getting into some shockers. We have Godzilla -1. So a lot of people absolutely adore this film. They adore it. Like, this is people's top 5. A lot of people's favorite film of the year. And look, I'm not gonna pretend like I'm a big like kaiju guy, or I know a lot about previous Godzilla films. I don't, compared to most people. But I've seen a few of the older ones. I haven't seen the original, but I've seen a few of the older ones, kind of the kaiju universe ones, like the Mothra versus Godzilla, stuff like that. And then I haven't seen any of the American ones. But I saw Shin Godzilla back in 2015, 16. I thought that was amazing. I thought that was excellent. I thought Godzilla brought a existential dread like I've never seen, because in every iteration, except for the American ones, which I don't know anything about, but in every Japanese iteration, or most Japanese iterations, the main canon, he is a representation of, you know, the bomb, or like dread from war, or that kind of thing. And in the Shin Godzilla, it takes place in modern day. And so it doesn't represent that. What it represents is something a lot more mysterious and kind of unknown, which made it all the more terrifying, in my opinion. And so, yeah, they did a really good job at making Godzilla in this film, in -1, terrifying with the way he looks or whatever. But for me, for something like Godzilla to be terrifying, it's what he represents. And in this, he represented this is purest Godzilla. This is what he's represented for forever. And so, yeah, they basically did purest Godzilla to the best they possibly could, but I just don't find that all exciting. Again, I appreciate this film. I thought it was decent, but I'm not buying into that this is like the best Godzilla ever, because it's just doing what Godzilla has done well in the past and just hitting all of the right check marks. And it's not that exciting to me, unfortunately. But I'm glad people are liking it. I'm glad people are liking a, you know, Japanese Godzilla film, and it's making waves, so that's cool. Moving on, we have John Wick Chapter 4. Oh, yep, we're getting into that territory right now. So I really enjoy John Wick films. I'm not gonna pretend like I don't. I liked the first one way back in the day when it came out. I really like the second one. See, that's the thing. A lot of people don't like the second one that much, which maybe if I went back and rewatched it, maybe I wouldn't like it as much. But when I watched it the first time, I loved it because it had such amazing world building. Like, there was so much to this John Wick universe that was really, really fascinating. And it ended on such a high note where, like, I was like ready. I was like, John Wick 3, this is about to be amazing. And then John Wick 3 was a bit of a disappointment to me. It just felt like we were doing more of the same. It didn't feel like the stakes were any higher. It just felt like we were on the same plane, if not lower. And then this film, the stakes are obviously high, but again, it just felt like more of the same. I felt like, of course, like, what they did with the action is so expertly done and so beautifully done. The stair sequence, the top-down sequence, which is one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. But there comes a point when I'm watching an action film or a film that has a very specific thing that it's doing, and it does it really, really well. And in this case, it's choreographed action, where it does it so well over and over and over again to the point where I just get bored. And it's like, doing everything perfectly isn't interesting after a certain point, you know? And then there was moments where it would be like, oh wow, that was cool, and then it's like, oh, we're back to this again, you know? Like, I don't know, I'm not that action junkie fan that a lot of people are. I enjoyed it, but I just didn't see what was super special about it. But yeah, John Wick 4, good watch regardless. Next is Padre Pio. Shia LaBeouf. He's in this movie. He's not in it that much. He's just kind of there. He doesn't really interact with anybody that is like the main focus of the movie. It's an Abel Ferrara movie. Abel Ferrara movies are interesting. He's in his late period, and I've talked about one of his films before. And I really like that he's just pumping out these like weird movies. This one is about, I think Italy, when it was kind of on the cusp of ever going like super left or super right, and as we all know, it went super right. And yeah, so this kind of follows like the leftist movements in Italy before it kind of went in the other direction. And so that's interesting on a historical perspective, but what this film was doing with having these monologues from Shia and then this political thing, like, I just wasn't really all that into it. This felt like a bit of a miss to me. It's very esoteric Ferrara shit, which again I like. It's just this one didn't land with me all that much. I think this movie isn't any better or any worse without Shia LaBeouf. It's just kind of funny that this is what he's been doing. All right, next we have Both Sides of the Blade from one of my favorite directors, Claire Denis. She released the film last year. What was that movie called? Stars at Noon, that I liked quite a bit. A lot of people didn't like it. I liked it quite a bit. It felt like a bit of a return to form. This one is just, it's kind of a return to form, but it's a little different than what she's done before. It's just a very intense marriage drama. I think they're married. I don't know. I saw it a while ago. And yeah, it's an intense marriage relationship drama. And there's just a lot of yelling, a lot of harsh words being said. And it was well done, but it was just completely miserable. Yeah, not a fun film to watch in the slightest. But it was, like I said, it was well made. Maybe it's one that I revisit because, like I said, I love Claire Denis. So let's keep it going. Okay, next up we have Blind Willow Sleeping Woman. This is an animated film, animated much like something like A Scanner Darkly or Waking Life or that Tower documentary that came out some years ago. And so this is a French film that's set in Japan because it's these short stories from a Japanese author, Haruki Murakami, whose stories have already been adapted to the likes of something like Drive My Car, that South Korean burning film. Very popular adaptive author. And these are like little fables. It's like three fables, basically, mixed into one little film. You know, they have like some connective tissue, but they're happening at different moments in time. And it was really interesting. You know, it's like those type of fables that don't really have like a clear lesson or anything. It's just kind of there, and they're mystical and weird, and I don't know. I enjoyed it. Very interestingly written female characters in this, but other than that, I enjoyed it. Next is Beautiful Beings. This is a Icelandic film. It was submitted last year for Iceland's international feature film for the Academy Awards, but it didn't come out on anything until this year. So yeah, it's about kind of young youth masculine culture, if that makes any sense. It's a lot about like bullying, but it's also about friendship. It's about the negatives of these types of friendships, but also the positives, and it goes to places that I did not expect it to go to. This movie is dark. It is brutal. It has a lot to say. There's a lot of nuances here that I wasn't expecting. Of course, I think movies like this have been done 1,000 times, but this one does it really well. I gotta admit, it does it really well. Bit of a miserable watch, but if that sounds like your kind of thing, go for it. Next is The Lost King. This is not a great movie by any means, but it's about this kind of middle-aged woman played by Sally Hawkins, one of my favorite actresses, who becomes obsessed with this research about finding the grave of this king who's has like an interesting history and is kind of unorthodox in his ways, and people don't like know where his grave is or something. And so she ends up doing the research and finding it. She becomes obsessed, right? And if anything, I saw this movie as an homage to those of us who become like completely obsessed with a certain topic like research-wise. And it's like those little obsessions kind of they're like the will to live for people, you know? It's like that is what keeps them going. That is what keeps them completely engrossed in life. Otherwise, it's like life kind of sucks, you know? And I know people like that, and I know I've collaborated with people like that, and I feel honored to collaborate with people like that because you can see that they care so much about what they are researching or trying to get out of their research. But yeah, if anything, it was just like a little cute story about something like that. Next is the Super Mario Bros. Movie. Yeah, I mean, as you can see, this film is much higher than a lot of other movies that you wouldn't think would be higher. I really enjoyed this. I saw it with some friends when it first came out. I had a blast with it. I saw it again with another friend, had a blast with it. This movie knows what it is, and it doesn't do anything unnecessary. So what I see a lot from films like this, animated films that are made for children, but they're also made, you know, for all ages, is that they try to throw in some like shoehorned emotional depth just to say that I don't know, that it has depth when it doesn't need to. A Super Mario Bros. Movie needs to be nothing more than like a fun roller coaster of a movie. Like, people don't play Mario games to cry, unless you're playing Super Mario Galaxy, that's different. But people don't play Mario games to get invested in their characters and story. They play it for the fun world and the thrill, you know? So that's all this movie was, and that's what it needed to be, and I appreciated that a lot. And yeah, I had a fun time with it. So good on Illumination. I'm usually not big on Illumination, but they did a good job with this one. Next is Radical. This is another Mexican film. This one was really, really popular in my area. As previously stated, I'm in Florida. And this was playing in the theaters for a while. So when I went out to see it, it had already been playing for a good while, and this theater was completely packed. I think I was like the only white dude in there. But people, I guess this movie's really been making its round, and it's very popular among Latino communities. And it's about this really rough area in Mexico. I think it's like really close to the border, the U.S. border. And there's just a lot of crime, and it's very much like a police state, you know, and their school systems are corrupt. And you have this teacher who comes in and is very unorthodox with his methods. And he actually gets the students to engage. And it really reminded me of some teachers I've had. I think anybody can relate to this who's ever been through a public school system, where it's like, public school just sucks. Nobody's going to deny that public school is terrible. But like that one semester or that one year, you had that one teacher who really made you feel like, wow, education can be great. It's not even just about enjoying education. It's about like being interested at all in seeing, because when you're in public school for so long, you get this tunnel vision where it's like, you don't really understand what the point of this is anymore, you know? And then you have those teachers who really make you see it, you know? And I feel like this is a really great homage to all of those teachers. And you know who yours is. I know who mine are, you know? And so I appreciated that with this movie. Yeah, check it out. Okay, next is Dehuin. I don't exactly know how to pronounce that. It's a Indian film that's 50 minutes. It's at that really weird in-between spot for lengths, because some consider 50 feature length, some consider it short film. This kind of functions like a short film, but this could, if it was any longer, it would be feature. So anyway, it's about a young man who, I think he wants to be an actor. I think that was it. He wanted to be an actor, and he really likes Hollywood. He wants to, make it big, that kind of thing. And so he's attending these acting classes and doing these workshops and doing these street performances and whatnot. And it's very minimalistic, but it's also kind of about the irrationality for certain people who never really will make it. They never really will see their dreams, to fruition. Like, he's really obsessed with Hollywood, but then he joins in this group, this talking group who's talking about Kiarostami, and they're like, because of their class, they're able to see, those really artistic films, the ones that are well regarded in the West, whereas if you're of a lower class, you don't see those films, so I don't know, it was interesting. I thought it was really well made. Yeah, check it out. And this is the last film. We're at number 40 in the CreamBetweens. Holy moly. Halfway through, baby. Alright, it's Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Yep. I have it at 6 out of 10. That's going to be a shock to a lot of people. A lot of people. Look, I loved the first Spider-Verse a lot. I grew up with Spider-Man, and Spider-Verse is probably my favorite Spider-Man movie. Like, it's amazing. It's incredible. It was such a breath of fresh air. It was more than that. It was like getting like oxygen hooked up to you and after being deprived of it. You know, like, it was incredible. And I think this film, it's trying to live up to really unrealistic expectations, and so it throws everything that it can at the wall. You know what I'm saying? It's like, this is like a kitchen sink kind of a movie, which it works. It does work. But then it just ends because it's a part one. And look, I don't think it's a bad thing to complain about a movie, you know, ending at like a cliffhanger, because this doesn't feel like a complete film. It doesn't feel like I got much out of this. I feel like I'm going to get all of what this film was setting up in the second half. But again, I enjoyed it quite a bit. So that's why it's at a 6 out of 10. It's at a 3 out of 5 stars. But yeah, I wasn't crazy about it as a lot of people were. Of course, it's extremely well made, but yeah. Anyway, that's it, folks. God, this is only CreamBetweens Part 1, and this video is definitely going to be over 30 minutes. So, I'll see you for CreamBetweens Part 2 coming soon. Peace out, yo.